Hey guys, it's me. So, I wanted to talk to you guys about this one story that's also making its rounds. So, this is from Newsweek. This, even though it's an old story, but it's still kind of ringing true to this day. So, this is from October 19, 2022. I know it's like I said, it's kind of old, but it still hasn't changed. The facts that it's still happening today. So, Democrats are siding with criminals over their victims, they're destroying our communities. This is an opinion piece. um, this is an obvious truth that I increasingly feel that the need to say out loud. We are all American citizens. We are entitled to the same rights and protections, no matter where we live or the color of our skin. The reason I feel the need to say it is that on the south side of Chicago, where I live and minister, it's not obvious. And this is despite the fact that we are literally drowning in race these days. In the 2 years since George Floyd was murdered, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement, the Defund the Police movement, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion movement, and the movements to remove ACT and SATs tests. Stripping schools of honor classes and wasting valuable time on white privilege instead of educating our kids upward. The latest in the Safety Act, which would abolish the cash bail system, the movement have all been pushed by elite in the name of helping blacks, but not one of these people have ever visited my neighborhood to ask what we think. It is almost like we have no say, like we are some sort of social experiment pawns without minds of our own. This is why Governor J.B. Pritzker's championing of the Safety Act is such an insult. The governor claims that his plan will make our city safer and more equitable. Sounds like a nice, sweet sentiment, doesn't it? But what about the minorities in my neighborhood who suffer of the worst violence in America? Don't we matter? The Democratic governor, who descends from one of America's richest families, will never have to see the realities of his action on the ground, but my community will. It's unfortunate, but thanks to decades of failed liberal policies, many of our impoverished, abysmal educated youths resort to violence, and when they do, they prey on American citizens who are just trying to live our lives and make the world a better place. Now, it's sad because this is true. The Safety Act did nothing but make the situation worse. Like, crime is out of control right now in Chicago. You have cashless bail, which basically means if you commit a crime, it could be anything from something simple. Like, I get it. If you're a first time offender and let's say you stole a candy bar and you got in trouble and you ended up going, to jail, you shouldn't have to sit in jail for something like as petty as that. But this also applies to people who commit even bigger crimes. So, like, if someone carjacked you and landed you in the hospital, that person gets to walk out on the street without having to be charged, without having to be in lockup, because of this whole cashless bail thing. You have people that are murderers who use the justice system now as a revolving door because nobody is being held accountable, which is really sad because it's really just hurting the minorities and the people that live in poverty or in like low income areas. It's not affecting all the people that have like money, the ones that live in all these rich areas. Like Governor Pritzker, he's a Nepo baby. In case y'all didn't know that, he comes from a very wealthy family. So it's stupid because he'll never understand what it feels like to be a minority, to feel how it feels. And it's not even being a minority, okay? Let me get this straight for everybody. Because in my neighborhood, when I used to live in the back of the yards in Chicago, we didn't just have like Latin people there or black people there that were poor people. We had white people that lived there. There's reasons why you have trailer parks, because those are for people that, and not to disparage anybody, but that have, really no money. That's for people that are poor, and poor doesn't like go by color. You could be poor and you could be any color. So I think it's stupid when they try to label these things as minorities because I think any race can feel that hurt. But with that being said, this revolving door that JB Pritzker and Brandon Johnson created is just making the situation worse. And it gets even worse, like if you can believe that, when you start including like the illegals into that as well. Because imagine this. You have a TDA or MS-13, right? And let's say hypothetically they committed an egregious crime, like let's say they are somebody, or they pew pew somebody, or unalive somebody, right? And they go, the cops come, if they even come, because, the mayor is trying to take away their funding, which is even funnier, and still trying to say that they don't need anybody there to help them, right? So let's say the cops do happen to show up, right? They get the guy and they bring him to jail, right? Well, how do you know the guy that they have is legit? What if he stole someone's information? What if, he gives a fake name because he doesn't have papers and they're just going to write it down? There's been proven documentation that actually happened, I believe, this month, last month actually, we're already in September, showing driver's license from California where it's supposed to say your name. It literally says no name. So how are you going to document these people? How are you going to say, like, John Smith is the one that committed the crime if you don't even know if John Smith is his real name? What if it's not? What if he doesn't give you a name? He's like, no speak English. I have no name. You won't know. And it's sad because you're having all these people that are Americans that have to deal with the pain and the loss because they're the ones that have to deal with this. Had these people been not allowed in our country, some of these people would still be alive. Had these people went to jail instead of using the revolving door and being able to get out, some of these people might be alive still. So let me go ahead and show you the next thing to kind of go into this whole story before we end it. And I just kind of want to touch on this because I want to bring everybody's attention to this because I think it's very important. So this is from Fox News. I'm not going away. Dad of murdered victim confronts Congress in a fury testimony.
House lawmakers focusing on victims of violent crime and repeat offenders at a field hearing in Charlotte, North Carolina. Logan Federico was only 22 years old when she was fatally shot during a home invasion at a house in Columbia, South Carolina. She went to USC to visit friends there, and her grieving father was at the hearing calling for immediate action. This is part of what he had to say.
Think about your child coming home from a night out with their friends, laying down, going to sleep, feeling somebody come in the room and wake them and drag her out of bed, naked, forced on her knees, with her hands over her head, begging for her life, begging for her hero, her father, me, that couldn't be there. Bang! Dead. Gone. Why? Because Alexander Devontae Dickey, who was arrested 39 times.
Holy shit, you heard that, right? This man was freaking arrested 39 times and was still let out on the street. Now, mind you, I don't know all his crimes. Some of them could be super innocent, like I said. But if they weren't, why wasn't this guy in jail still? Why didn't they hold him? Like, I feel like I get the whole thing that, the whole, presumed innocent, stuff, right? And I totally get that, 100%. But I think for certain things, you really need a lot of context for, where it's like, okay, if they stole like $500, I get it. You don't need to be in jail. You couldn't, go to court, blah, blah, blah. But if it's for something as egregious and maybe you were caught in the act, and maybe you're a serial person of this who's committed multiple crimes like this where it's just kind of escalating. At that point, I do think you should stay in jail until your court date. And maybe other people wouldn't have to go through this pain like this father did had this guy been in jail still. But let's continue.
25 felonies was on the street. You need to fight for the rest of our children, the rest of the innocents, and stop protecting the people that keep taking them from us.
The man with all that courage is with me now. Stephen Federico, good morning to you, and I'm sorry for your loss. I know you're living with a tremendous burden, and I think you found your voice. The first thing I want to say is that these were House members, Republicans and Democrats, who left Washington, D.C., subcommittee, that came down to Charlotte, North Carolina to hold that hearing. I applaud them for doing that. But how they find a resolution to your matter is an entirely different debate. I have a question for you. Did you get an answer that was satisfactory, that would be sufficient enough to live up to the life that your daughter had here on Earth?
No, no. You know, I've got some great answers from one side, and the other side was more concerned with money and where it was coming from and who was taking it. But at the end of the day, there is no answer yet for it. But the soft on crime stuff has to stop. We have to be able to keep career criminals in prisons. We need more prisons. We need more mental institutions. We need more mental health. But no, you know, the meeting turned into something totally different from another side.
Yeah. Help me with something here. You called out the killer's name, Alexander Devontae Dickey. 30-year-old convicted felon, extensive criminal history, 39 arrests, 25 felony charges.
Right.
Was that all in South Carolina?
From what I understand, yeah.
Shit.
A couple counties, I think 23 of the felonies were in Lexington, and I think the others were in Richland County.
Okay, so that's
Not
a central part of the state, primarily, is your understanding. And he spent, what is it, 600 days in prison?
Right, 600 days, and if he would have been prosecuted properly and sentenced properly, he may have done over 140 years in prison.
Wow. So the parties are divided here.
Okay, so let's see what this guy has. So this Alexander Dickey, career criminal, charged with murder, 2 counts of first-degree burglary, 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. So he shouldn't even be allowed to have a weapon. But this is a person that's been nonstop doing crime. Like, I think once you have somebody like that, they really should have just stayed locked up. They shouldn't. This is where it's so conflicting, because on one hand I understand, but on the other hand it's like, come on, I don't think you should allow people, especially like with the Safety Act, for example, I don't think you should allow people like this to be put out on the street. Like, they're obviously a danger to everybody, not just like, let's say, to himself, but like literally to everybody. Like, he should have just stayed locked up until it was time for court, and they shouldn't have let him out. Like, if they had proof of everything he did and he got charged, and they should have gave him a tough sentence, because maybe that's what he needed, you know, to learn, I guess, his lesson. But then again, some people don't learn. Some people, that's a lifestyle for them, and that's really sad.
Republicans are saying your lenient policies and the judges have allowed this man to walk time after time. And Democrats are saying the local prosecutors are understaffed and they're overwhelmed and you need more money. Can they both be right?
No.
No, absolutely not. The Democrats are wrong. It takes a judge and a solicitor to make those decisions. It took 10 minutes to find out that Alexander Dickey was a career criminal and what his extensive record was. They didn't bother to do their homework. That's the problem. It's not because they're understaffed. It's because they just didn't do the work. They don't communicate Lexington to Richland County. I've been told that. They don't work together.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they knew what they ran into when you opened your mouth this week?
I think they found out real quick. I'm not going away.
Good.
My daughter isn't going away.
He needs to
And there
be the
isn't
voice
going.
for her.
We have
nobody
to
else
stop
will.
more Logan Federicos.
Yep.
I can't save her now, but
You can definitely save
buckle
other
up.
people.
Put your helmet on.
Mm-hmm. Sir, you've got a GoFundMe page to help support the family, and you've raised quite a bit of money already, about $44,000.
Yeah.
How can that help you?
Well, obviously we're going to get some foundations going for Logan, some scholarships. We're in talks with her community college that she was going to. We're going to put that money to good use to just help do what I'm trying to do and make America safer. It has to be. We have to protect our future. Logan would have been a big part of the world. She would have been a big part of problem solving. She was what this country needed, and it was taken from her because of poor decision making.
Yeah. Sir, stay strong, and may her memory live on. I heard you say that all she did was talk about how she wanted to go see her friends in Colombia, but she was expected to come home that entire time. Sir, keep fighting, and we'll stay in touch with you, okay? Thanks for keeping her memory alive. Thank you, Stephen.
And thank you for keeping our memory alive. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on.
I'm Steve Doocy.
It's sad, and it's true though. The Democrats don't want to do anything to help. They were in power for so long, right? They had all three of the chambers. You know, they had the Senate, Congress, the presidency. They didn't pass any laws. I don't know why people keep falling for their BS, because they keep saying like, well, when we get in power, we're going to do A, B, and C. And then they never do anything. You know, it's the same old Tolkien thing about, oh, you know, we're going to look into reparations. The stupid thing about reparations is that you're going to be into everybody, you know, because, you know, and I know it's going to be a very unpopular thing for me to say, but I'm just going to say it. You know, blacks weren't the only people that were enslaved. You know, you had the Native Americans that were enslaved, you had Latinos enslaved, you had Asians that were enslaved, Japanese, Chinese, you had Polish people, you even had some Europeans that were enslaved. And don't they deserve it as well? You know, their voices are never heard because, you know, the blacks are more outspoken about it, but they weren't the only ones, you know, and don't they deserve reparations? And if that's the case, how do you define that? And the one thing I hate about what these people start talking about reparations is like, who's paying for it? Because I'm pretty sure my lineage did not own any slaves. I'm pretty sure they were probably enslaved because my ancestry probably goes back to, you know, like Native American, Latino, you know, whatever. I don't know. I haven't checked it all. I could only go based off what my grandparents told me. And, you know, how are you going to know who is it? Not to mention, you also have people that, you know, who are mixed race. So, like, let's say someone that looks like white bread, you know, what if his ancestor was a person who was a slave? Are they going to get money? How do you determine this? And what's funnier is that not everybody that's here in America that's asking for reparations, some of those people didn't even, you know, have families that were slaves from here. Some of them came afterwards. So it's like, it's so dumb to have this conversation. And to be honest, when you look into the history of slavery, you'll find out that, and there's a good video on it, I should do a reaction to it, but there's a video that shows how slavery actually came about, because it was, you know, it's wrong, but it was happening worldwide, and it's still happening to this day. Most people don't understand that slavery never ended in certain countries. It's still going on, which is insane. But the people that enslaved people, like, I had found this out about Puerto Rico. I never knew this about Puerto Rico. I was kind of mind blown about this. But when Columbus or the Spaniards came to Puerto Rico, they had ran into the Taino Indians, okay? Those Indians literally told the Spaniards to go to Africa to get slaves because they didn't want their people to be enslaved, which is funny, right? You wouldn't have thought that. But they said, yeah, they're good workers, you know, they'll just do it, you know, just go there, you know, don't bother us. And so when they would go to Africa to get these slaves, they didn't step on the ground. They didn't go out there and, you know, pillage all these tribes and go and like kidnap people. No, their own tribe, their own people sold them into slavery. So they would kidnap all these people, the people in Africa. They would come to the shores and do like a bidding for these people. So my thought is like, if y'all want reparations, maybe you should hit up Africa who did this to y'all. I'm just saying. But back to the subject at hand. Sorry. Sometimes I could go on crazy tangents. But I feel bad for this dad. And this sucks because, like I said, the Democrats, they play this game over and over and they don't do anything to make changes. You know, these people just want to stay in power and they're just going to keep telling you those sweet little nothings because they know you're going to believe the lie instead of just holding their feet to the fire. And one thing I do like about the MAGA movement and the Republicans that we currently have, not the rhinos, because I don't like any of the rhinos, but Trump is doing everything he told us he was going to do. And I love that because that's what we voted for. We voted for this. We wanted law and order back. We wanted all these illegals that got into our country because of the Biden administration. We wanted to have them kick rocks, you know? And again, I feel bad for this father and other people who have been victims because of criminals and illegals because of the Democrats. I feel so bad for them, and I'm so glad that their voice is coming out and they're just speaking so loud because they deserve that. You know, they deserve to make their voices heard, and that's how you make change. But you guys let me know what you think. You know, comment below. And, you know, if you guys think I'm nuts, that's fine. You guys wouldn't be the first ones to think that. But, you know, I appreciate it. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a great one. Bye.